Hi, my name is Cherie Ray. I am a consulting coach based in Houston, Texas. My work focuses on eliminating struggle from my clients so they can have a richer, fuller, more enjoyable experience of life. In this conversation, we're going to be talking about waking up to both sides of loss, disappointment, and unmet expectations. They're part of every person's life. Typically, we work really hard to strategize around them so they won't happen. You don't like them to happen, you didn't expect them, but still they occur. With all of the unnamed dread that our minds can generate, there's another side to loss, disappointment, and unmet expectations to explore. In this conversation, we're going to do just that. So there were like three very specific points that I thought would reduce suffer and struggling around these things that seem to be so prevalent in life. Now, I call them LDEs just because I just like the idea of it being LDEs, because everybody's going to have it. Everybody's going to have loss in their life. Everyone's going to have disappointment in their life, and everyone's going to have unmet expectations. Now, it appears to me that looks universal to every human being. May not be if you're one of the chosen ones that those have never entered your reality. Congratulations. Good for you. But otherwise, it looks universal. So if these things are universal in every human being's life, okay, it's good to see that if we want to struggle and suffer less, that one of the primary ways to struggle less is to see that we're out, I'll say, out of range of the nature of life. And what I mean by out of range of the nature of life is it's like, okay, if we really get a chance to see that everybody's going to have them, they're not invited guests to your party, but they're still going to crash the party at some point. There's no possible way to be good enough that they don't crash your party. There's no possible way to be whatever enough that they don't crash your party. And there's no way you can get it all right at the right time, at the right place for them not to crash your party. All right? So if you're struggling with something, it's good to kind of back up and look and see from a, I'll say like a spaceship perspective of the earth. If you can really go high up there and look down to see if what you're grappling with is unique to you, or could this be happening on that population on earth? You know, people get together, people break up, people experience loss of all kinds. Loss of life, loss of things, loss of friends, loss of realities they once knew. So that would be like step one to kind of consider going, man, am I in aligned with the nature of life? And the more that I can align with what's true about the human condition for everyone, that's going to be really a first opportunity to reduce your struggle. Now, it's not really a how, but it really is a place to inquire. Because as you can open your mind to inquire, any time we can look at any issue from a higher altitude or a higher perspective, we're going to get a bigger picture of it, which means there's going to be more space around it to receive fresh insights or fresh information. So have y'all noticed that when you really grind down and look really, 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 really close, almost on a microscopic level, that you suffer more? You know, I mean, when we really get ourselves underneath a microscope, we suffer more. And we feel like we're the only one in the world that this is happening to, and we feel very isolated and very alone, and like we can get debilitated at that level, at really looking at ourselves microscopically. So I'll say that seeing that loss, disappointment, and unmet expectations are universal, that might help your guts relax a little bit, you know, just in the flow of life. Because as we start to struggle on things, I think this is a great way to kind of get onto the human experience, that if we're really struggling and suffering, the first thing to really get on is that if there's pain involved with the struggling and suffering part, I I must be looking in the wrong direction. I must be looking in the wrong direction, because you're looking in the direction, I believe, of something that is uh, fixed, determined, solid, certain, and there's a whole lot of, if those things can have blurred lines around them versus uh, a cemented vault around them, you're going to see something fresh and new around it. Which is, we all want. I mean, really, if we think about it, our entire experience of life can change with one fresh thought. That's all it takes. And that comes from inside us, you know? It doesn't come from Amazon, it doesn't come from FedEx. I mean, it'd be great if it was a lottery ticket, but even the experience of all of that is only going to come knowing that, to me, it's quite hopeful to carry the truth that it's only, I could have one fresh thought and my entire experience of life could change. And it's not, it's a, to me, it's a hidden superpower, but so obvious we don't know we have it. So you could help you to relax more in a place of, to me, it makes me feel more hopeful that there really is a pipeline of possibility of something fresh and new could occur to me and could change all of this. So the second thing about loss and disappointment and unmet expectations was the upside of it, or the other side of the coin of it. While it is true, it's in the nature of life. What I think is so helpful is it wakes us up to the realization that every one of us is living in a universe of our own creation, you know? But we can kind of dumb down ourselves to think everybody's seeing it the way we're seeing it. That we think the way we see it, like I was talking a minute ago, that it's solid and fixed and delineated, and it's, that reality is a concrete vault, so to speak. So when we have this, the way we're seeing things, if we can, there's no perfection, but if we can relax with this, going, there might be another way to see this, there might be even a place of collaboration when we realize that everybody's sitting in a reality of their own creation. Everybody is. I think we get more curious about, I think we get a lot more curious about people that are around us, because we really think they see it the way we see it. And then when we really inquire as to how do they see it or be open to it, and some of the things people say, it can just shock you. You know what I mean? Because it's so far from how you're convinced it is, that it does expand your mind. It does require you to consider someone else's perspective of it, and to be able to see that we all live in a very separate reality. On the earth, we're all together, we're all in the same place. You might even be in the same house. You know, but everyone is seeing the conditions of their life unique to them. Unique to them. And I I think when I caught on to that at first I couldn't imagine people couldn't see it the way I was seeing it because it's so real to me and my feeling state is so flooded with how I'm seeing it that how could they not see the truth in front of their and I really took it to a level of truth, that this is true. It was like true for me, but not true for everybody in the room. I think it's kind of like even if you have siblings, it's like you can have siblings. I think even twins that live in the same house at the same time and be in front of the same situations, and they're like, "Oh, how did you get that from that?" Or "Where were you?" Because I was in the room and that's not what happened, And it's like, wow, wow, because it looks so hard and solid. So I think I love that it can wake you up to the truth that every human being is living in a reality of their own creation and perceptions. And it's like, you just don't take it for granted that everybody's seeing what you're seeing. And that what that might do is help you generate some curiosity within yourself or expand on a conversation just because you're just not expecting them to get it, whatever it is, you know, whatever it is, you know, like like a friend of mine recently, I thought this was so fascinating about an expectation. Is like their home was robbed around the outside of their house. Everything was looted and salvaged and gone through in the garage and all this kind, and just gathered up and scraped up and like around 4:30 in the morning. And everybody was upset except they hadn't told the primary homeowner, I mean they didn't tell the family member they thought that would get the most upset. So they waited a couple of days until they all calmed down until they told them what was going on. And it was so funny because the primary person that they were so concerned with goes, well, that's what people who need money do. It's like drug addicts need money. They got to hawk something. They got to get money. It was a non-event. It was like nobody's hurt. Everybody's fine. That's what they do. So it's like, to me, it was such a great example of like, okay, you can be aligned with the truth about life. Like, yeah, people who want drugs need to find, if they have no money, they got to sell something to get what they want. Okay. And that's what the police told them. It's like, oh, well, everything they took was something that could be hawked. So it was probably transient people rummaging through the garage and they went off with whatever. I was like, well, isn't that? And so everyone thought that person would be the one upset and wouldn't be able to get them off their mind. They'd feel violated and breached and blah blah blah. And it was like, that's what happens. It was great. I thought that was so helpful. So the third part I thought about waking up to both sides of loss, disappointment, and expectations is we get an opportunity to see that what our mind imagines about how we'll react and be when we confront loss, disappointment, and unmet expectations. Our mind paints a picture of who we'll be and how we'll act during those imagined times. But the upside to navigating loss, disappointment, and expectations, met and unmet, is that you get a chance to see that how much fiction lives inside your head. You really get a wake-up call to how much fiction and how much of a false identity we live underneath. So when something happens in the mind, your mind travels and gives you some unnamed dread and scary stuff. And then something grander than that or something else happens and somehow you find yourself navigating it. And because you had painted your picture of like, oh, if that happened to me, I would be incapacitated and unable to function. And maybe you are, and that's not a problem, but more times than not, you do what's in front of you to do in those situations, and life carries on. So you get a chance to really break all of these false identities that we carry about ourselves. And those false identities are just accumulated over life, over a lifespan, over what people have told us, what when people have thrown up their thinking on us, we've added it to our identity. And so it's like, hey, we don't need it to stick. We don't need it to stick. And so you do get a chance. You do get a chance to redefine who you are at any moment if you want to. If you really want to, you can start fresh at any moment with who you are. That that also brings great hope into my world. If you really got the realization that you could start fresh every day, and I guess whatever that um, it's not a platitude, but whatever that saying was is whatever. Today is the begin. What is that? What was that used to be on everything, printed on everything? I can't
Today's
remember.
the first day of the rest of my life.
Yes, 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 yes. It escaped me. But I mean, it is the first day of the rest of your life, but it's like, what if you could start it clean? You know what I mean? You could really start it clean. You don't have to bring any past assessment or judgment of yourself to this moment. Anything you don't like about yourself, or you can leave it behind. Anything somebody told you about yourself, leave it behind. Anything before this moment, you can leave it behind. I love that idea. I love that idea. When you, it helps me to realize how much of before today I'm bringing with me. And that weighs me down. I can, I can, I feel like a hot air balloon that's cutting the strings on some of those sandbags. It's like, no, I'm the one bringing that along. I don't want it. I don't want it. I want to just see what it feels like to lighten the load every day versus add more into the basket. So those are some of the things that I thought about the upside of loss, disappointment, and expectation. In summary about, well, truly, if we get a reality check about what's real about a human experience, those things will show up. And there's nothing you can do to work your fingers to the bone to not to be able to not have those uninvited guests. You know, you cannot. They're just knowing they're in the nature of life, kind of like the nature of a drug addict is to look for money to buy drugs. Big deal. No judgment. It just looks like that's what that's the nature of life. People want something, they try to find a way to get it. Looks pretty universal. Looks pretty universal. And that when you get that, like if you really get devastated by someone, say they hurt your feelings, and you get the chance to see that you can't understand how they could not see what they did, you know, and how hurtful and devastating it was, and then you find out it wasn't even on their radar. It's like, you know, you just it just can knock you off your heels because it's so here on you, and it's not even in their solar system because they live in a separate reality from what you live in. Totally separate reality. And then the third part is that you get the opportunity as you navigate these things to even meet parts of yourself that your mind has probably painted another picture of. A capacity to love, a capacity to recover, a capacity to get your head above water, a capacity to explore new avenues that you hadn't explored before. So those are the things that came to me on the topic, and I'd love to hear if you have a question or something further you'd like to look around on those.
Sure, Cherie. We've had several conversations over the last year and a half, and I think the thing that struck me about this around loss, disappointment, and unmet expectations is it really rang so true for me, especially over the last year and a half, 2 years, with job loss and kind of a lot of triggered fear. And what has happened for me, and I continue to make conscious choices around this, is that I am more aware that those things are happening. And I can say, wait a minute, wait a minute. I don't have to try to exert control over situations that I have no control over. Mm-hmm. And the benefit I'm finding in that is that I am able to see some of my own patterns a little bit more clearly. And it brings me into a deeper spiritual connection. And it's like, oh, I'm trying to do X and Y isn't going to move because I'm trying so hard. I'm making this harder than it absolutely needs to be. And so in those acts of awareness, and then kind of taking a different path, and sometimes it involves letting go. I have a couple of people that I do work for who haven't paid me, right? So I got myself all kind of worked up about it, right? And so I took some steps that were needed to make inquiries and all of that. And then I thought, you know what? I am generating for myself a state of anxiety, and I don't need to do this. So I let it go. I let it go.
Now later.
And guess what?
What happened? What happened? The check showed up?
Well, yes, the emails have come. I know when the money is to be expected. The second one that has taken a little bit of time is on its way to my bank account. And, it really saved me from continuing to perpetuate my own disappointment or thinking that, I had to have it right now. It's like, no.
Yeah.
That's not always the case. It's like trusting the process. And so that's been a big thing for me, and it's helping me to see some of my own behaviors a little more clearly, so that I can make a conscious decision to do something else. So
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And what you're saying, Marianne, is like you can see the reality your mind painting. And this has got to happen now, and it's got to, for me to be okay, this has got to happen this way. And to me, it's one of those false identities about life that our mind creates that we get the opportunity to wake up to. That is so cool. And I love too what you said, Marianne, about, and this is how how it ran through my head was like oftentimes on those things that I really don't want to have to do but do, and I love the place about, okay, who do I need to be? Because if we're all consciousness and we can pull up anything from anywhere, who do I need to be to get this done? And from what you said, what I loved about it is like, okay, who do I need to be to do this with no stress on me? You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, let's just play with it. If we can play with it, going, okay, who do I need to be so I can navigate this with no stress, or how can I, you know? And then to me, you've enlisted your creative process, and more ideas are going to come when you kind of like realize I don't want to I don't want to go into fear, to use your words. I don't want to go into fear or let even a triggered feeling push me into fear when you see that there's a possibility of not doing it. And then other, like to me it's like when you reroute water, it's like then all these other routes open up that were just not needed before, because it always had a definite downhill route to travel. But if that gets blocked, it's like, no, I'm not suffering. I'm not going to go into fear. It's got to travel somewhere else. And it's like, okay, go travel and bring me something different.
Right. It opens up possibilities and the idea that something new, I don't know where it comes from. It's somewhere within, right? That offers me an alternative to the way I was behaving.
Totally, totally. To me, it comes from that same place that can bring us a fresh inspiration or a fresh thought about something, wherever that vast source is. But that's within us. We're a channel of it. Whatever it is, it's available, and that it will deliver something. So true. So true. I love that. Thank you so much. I love that. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm not a ma'am. Is that me?
Yes, my dear.
All right. I'm just kidding you. Yeah, I just thinking that the topic, like I do totally understand the a fresh thought can change everything.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm assuming that includes the feelings, because the things that you're talking about are a lot of strong feelings, like that can come from those things, really strong. Like they tend to blind us, to ourselves in a way, loss and disappointment. And so I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
Well, tell me what you mean. Like, I'm not quite
Well,
sure what.
it's so hard to get stuck in your head with the feelings. Like the feelings can
Oh,
sometimes
sure.
quagmire me,
Oh,
you
sure.
know,
Sure.
into, so it's hard to see like what should come first. Do the feelings need to clear away before I can think clearly?
Mhm.
Or do I need to, you know, notice that my thinking might have something to do with how I'm feeling? I don't know really how that works. It's so hard uh, to see that when you're in a really emotional place.
Agreed. Agreed. So if you stating just what you said, that when you're wound up or triggered or knocked off center, you're not going to see things clearly. So it's like if you know that, and that's why I like to have these conversations when we're calm and relaxed and information can get in. you know? So it's like, wait a minute, if you really know, it's like, okay, wait a minute. You can reflect on your own life, and it's like, yeah, I've been knocked off center and been very upset and sidelined or whatever, but I'm not now. So there must be something within me that helps me um, calibrate and get back in the game of life, or get my head above water as a given, not as a fluke, but as a given. So when you do get really amped up, wrapped up in your feelings, submerged in your feelings and your thinking, you don't need to do anything about it, because you know at some point in time there's I kind of make jokes about it, but there's a superpower that's going to get you back upright. You're not doing it, but there
And you
is.
shut. Yay.
What was that? Hmm, interesting. But there's a superpower and something that brings you back up, because I like the example of like your first broken heart from sixth grade or whatever. You're not still hanging on to that. You've moved on. When you were devastated and thought you would never feel that way again. It's like, so that you can have compassion and give yourself space to get your head back up above water. And you can know that when you're offline, kind of like your computer, when it's offline, you just cannot retrieve great information.
Yeah, I wanted to just say one other thing. I think that like sometimes if there's all kinds of thinking that can come in along with the emotions that might be thinking that we want to hang on to, and yet it's not the kind of thinking that is necessarily productive throughout the long course of it.
Yes, but see, you can really get that understanding now when you're clear-headed. You know, when you're clear-headed, you're like, gosh, I don't want to trust what comes to my mind when I'm at my most feared feared place, my most hurt place. Even when the urgency is really pushing you, it's like, no, I need to take care of this right now. It's like, back to the point that was earlier made. It's like, just because the feeling feels urgent, it's not. If it was urgent, you would already be on 911, or you wouldn't have had time to think about it.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so it's like, as you gain the understanding, when you're clear-headed, I love that. I never thought about that before now, about the metaphor of like a computer getting offline. But if you've lost your internet connection, you don't have access to good information, and that's when you're triggered, upset. You're out of sorts. You're offline. Just wait. Wait until the connection is reestablished, and you're going to have higher quality thoughts come to mind. And at some point, it will happen. It will happen. You'll find yourself laughing at a joke and then be going, no, I'm mad, but you just laughed at a joke. You know what I mean? And I think that's so funny. It's like, no, I haven't laughed in years. And you tell a joke and they laugh. It's like, well, can't see how convincing the mind can be that you haven't laughed at a joke in years and you just laughed at one. Yeah, yeah. We're going to have all that upset, but you can know you're not going to get good information or act in your highest good or any highest good when you're um, offline. I think you're pulling from all the uh, wounding of the past when you're offline. You're not pulling from the wisdom of the person that you are today, with what you know today, and in the consciousness that you sit in today. Thank you for that. Anybody else?
Hi, Cherie. So I think what I've seen more recently through some sort of changes in my life that I haven't opted for, and certainly were not ones that I was hoping for, that it's been so useful to remind myself, and I do need to remind myself that something that you just said, things don't need to be a certain way for me to be okay. Because my initial reaction to that change is depending on what it is, disappointment, despair, pain, and yet that's almost a reminder that I've invested my my okayness in it being a certain way. So it's like a call, like a reminder that's a little bit harsher than I want it to be, but
Mm-hmm.
I can hold it more lightly and just really question, well, what am I not seeing here? where is the lesson almost? Where is the good to come of this? Inevitably I move on, or it's that bouncing back up to the surface happens more quickly. And I guess also I get to see the cool stuff that comes of it. Like, for example, job loss. Other opportunities open up, don't they? I mean, it's like, oh, okay, I have to pivot again. But, you know, what if this is a kick up the behind, or a really cool, something's going to be around the corner that I would have never have gotten to see had this unexpected change not happened. So, and the same in relationships, you know. So it's just being really cool to see what you're pointing to, is that, you know, we're always going to be okay no matter what. It's just sort of surfing the wave and seeing where it takes us. But I wondered if you could say anything more around not having so much on any specific outcome, because I do still get tripped up really, really badly until I see what's going on.
That's so true. It's so that to me is like human beings get real attached to outcome. You know, that looks universal. We set our sights on something and then we work so hard to get that something for whatever reason. We either think it's going to make our life better, or I just want to play in that arena, or whatever. And to me, that's why anyone opens the door to like a spiritual, exploring the spiritual side of life. You know, because that part of us that has us looking in the direction of the spiritual side of life, I think wants to wake us up from all those, that notion that I need that to be okay, you know. And I think even operating under the truth, to me this looks like truth, that sometimes things work out and sometimes they don't work out as planned. And it really, I could leave it at that and not make it personal, you know, not make it personal. Like, oh my God, I wore the wrong suit to the interview, you know, or if I was 10 years younger, they'd hire me. Oh, if I was this, that would have happened. Or if I weighed 10 pounds less, it would have been a better, you know, I mean, you see how as soon as the whatever doesn't happen, if you can stay out of the realm of making it about you and holding it more open, like, well, some jobs come to an end, some jobs begin, but we tend to implode on ourselves, and then that's when we really start to suffer, is when we start to chew on. I always laughed, like it was like I would chew my own leg off, making me wrong and the reason why something didn't work out. You know? It's like, gosh, there's a lot of independent variables in the world, like we talked about, that just we're not in control of. And I think it's so funny. I think it's so funny, like if you ever hear actors talking about how they get cast in a role, you know, and it is so not personal. You know, whoever it is that's doing the casting has an image in mind that this person either fulfills or not, and it's not personal. So I think it's kind of like that in life. How can we play? How can we play the game of life and make it, play it all out, but don't make it about me? And that's to me, that's just a practice. It's not a magic pill. It's a daily practice. Moment to moment practice, maybe even. You know? Yeah, yeah. I appreciate that. It's hard to have a life and it's your life and it not for it to be personal. That is such a paradoxical hot seat to sit in, you know. Thank you.
That's so helpful. I'd yeah, forgotten that aspect of when we make things personal, we suffer all the more. Because then there's more resistance. But when we see it's not personal, it's just easier to, yeah, to forward.
And when we can, and I think when we're kind of trapped in making it personal, can we have compassion for ourselves instead of just adding to it? you know, just, God, gosh, because we wouldn't do it to someone else. We wouldn't remind them what a loser they are and how it never works out for them. And, if they were better and different, they'd have what they want in life. I mean, we would never say that to another human being. So, when we can't, when we can't, can we just be kinder when we're miserable? Kinder to ourselves. We don't have to do anything great. Just be kinder to ourselves when we're miserable. It won't last. It's going to last too long. That we know. It's going to last too long, but it's not going to last forever. If it lasts an hour, if it lasts 2 weeks, it's too long. If it lasts an hour, it's too long. If it lasts 15 minutes, it's too long. We want a better feeling all the time. Yes, yes.
I was working on a project yesterday, and one thing went wrong, and then another thing went wrong, and then I got that fixed, and then another thing went wrong, and it just seemed like no matter what I did, and I could feel myself, and I was working with my boss, and which just added to it. I added to it because of that, and it was almost time to quit. And I wanted to finish that project because I wasn't going to be there the next day. Anyway, so just all of this setup that was going on, and I noticed that, and I couldn't help but think, well, when one thing goes wrong, it's just kind of like it just kind of gets into a roll of things going wrong. And, and I think about like unmet expectation, I expected that would go easily, and then I started to expect that it would go poorly, and certainly yeah, the easily didn't come to me, but the poorly did come to me. And now by the time I got toward the end of the project, I noticed I was almost shaky, and I thought, well, this is not good. And then I thought, well, you know what? I can stay late. I can ask him to leave, and I can stay late to do this, and I can relax, and then I can take my time and finish it. Well, as it turned out, we both stayed late and finished it. But it was interesting to see all that. I'm not sure what to do with it. I mean, I lived through it, but it's just hard not to take. It's hard not to take it personally. Well, if I had been more careful, if I had slowed down, if I had been different, if I had relaxed and just said, okay, you got plenty of time, just take it, as it comes. If something happens, you can take care of it. And anyway, so, but I didn't do that. But I did think about doing it. I think about the fact that I wasn't doing it. But there's something about thinking that if something's going wrong, that it's going to continue that way. It's almost like that seems like a truth,
Well, what looks true to me about that, and just see how it feels, is like if when something goes wrong and my mind starts to fixate on it wrong, and it was me that made it go wrong, and if I'd been different, it wouldn't have gone wrong. To me, that puts my focus and attention on all of those stories, and of course, I'm going to be distracted from the next thing I'm doing, which is going to invite something else to go wrong because I'm not even paying attention to what I'm doing. But I am sure in the story about, I'm distracted from giving my presence to something.
Yeah.
I'm looking at everything my mind is making up about me, and my body might be muscle memory going through the motions, but then I'm not bringing all of my bandwidth to whatever it is I'm doing. And if you want to chew on yourself, you're like, okay, chew on me later. I'll let you chew on me later, but right now I got to get back to this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like you don't have to fight all that. It's just like, okay, I'm going to park you for now, but I got to get this done, and sooner or later it'll get less interesting to chew on yourself. That's a great example. That's a great example. Then it does feel like a snowball, but it's like, and then the next thing adds to that whirly bird show of thought, and then the next thing that you stump your toe, and then it's like, oh my god, and here, you know, this showed up in a conversation recently, and I just loved it. And I love the metaphor of it too. It's like it goes from a single rubber band to a rubber band ball of thought. You know what I mean? All those layers of rubber bands inside of a rubber band ball. When it really starts to compound and swirl, all of that is knotted up. I love that. Janet.
I know, just as you were talking, it just came to me that I think the one thing that's helped me the most lately is that it's come to me that when you say, it's not personal, practice playing the game of life all out, but realize it's not about you. I think for me, the last place where I can get through that barrier is when it's your family. Because you really, I think some part of me has fought for the idea that, when it's your family and it's your people, it is personal. And yet I'm really experiencing in the last 2 years, it's so not. You're just closer to them. So you see their emotions rise and fall, and you think you know what's going on. Well, it's really not personal a lot of the times. And a lot of the time when they want it to be personal and put it on you, it's got nothing to do with you. It's because they don't want
it. That's a great point.
I just think that for me, maybe it's just, weird family history or whatever, but I always would think, oh, that really is about me. If something was going wrong or not going well, or somebody was upset, particularly if somebody was upset, for God's sake, I'm ready to jump in there and take responsibility for whatever went wrong. And I'm learning, no, it's really nothing to do with me.
Totally. And I think that what you're pointing to is like, because there's so much shared reality in family relationships, there's so much shared reality, you think you're seeing it in the way that you're seeing it, but they have their own separate reality about what has been shared. You might all be looking at the same Christmas tree, but everybody's got a different reality and experience of that Christmas tree.
The other thing with family is that we, along the years, collect so many more stories about one another, and so that's what we're seeing through, is filtering everything that we see, so it complicates it. Yeah.
Totally. And like there's like we even have like tribal identities, like, oh, she's the one you can't give keys to. She'll leave him. And he's the one that's always the explorer. You know what I mean? We all kind of operate under those kind of identities. And it's like, that's still just conceptual thinking about people. And then we operate underneath all that as if it's true and real. Kind of like that group I told you about. Like, well, we can't tell them what happened because he'll get all upset. It's like, well, guess what? He didn't. But they all believed he would. There was one other thing recently too about unmet expectations that I think that didn't occur to me till now. But say when you are, hurt, or when you're really triggered up, to use that word, to really triggered up, whatever emotion it is. A friend of mine recently did this, and I thought it was so fun and fascinating that, it's something really, really sent her off in a tizzy. And then when she kind of didn't get over it, but when she kind of came back to a little bit of equilibrium, she decided at that moment that I'm going to give myself 2 days and I'll be over this. And I was like, that was in my mind, I was like, man, that's a pretty big ticket item. But she had made up her mind. She's like, she could wallow in it. She could whine about it. She could verklempt about it. She could do anything she wanted to, but she was only going to give herself 2 days, and then she was going to get over it. And I was like, now that looks like a seat of power, if you ask me, you know? Really, I loved it. I loved it because I was like going, man, you can see where somebody could hold on to that one for a good 50 years if they wanted to. You know, but she decided she was going to give herself 2 days and then she was going to get over it. It'd be great if it happened sooner, but otherwise she'll be over it in a couple of days. So to me, that's sitting in a real seat of power. And if you know, it's 2 days and you have it and you're like, okay, great, I might reset the clock. But so there's going to be some love and compassion in there for you going, you know. But there's an intention and a willingness to get over it, which I think makes a big difference. You can you can decide you want to hold on to it consciously and consciously have an intention to get over it. So anyway, that's kind of a sidebar, but I thought that was so helpful to add to the mix. Cool. Well, golly, I thank you guys so much for coming to the conversation. It's a real pleasure to get to see you all. Thank you for listening to this conversation on waking up to both sides of loss, disappointment, and unmet expectations. I hope you found something that resonates with you and heard something that you can take to heart and really consider. If we take something to heart and really consider it, we're extending an invitation to learn more. Again, my name is Cherie Ray, and I thank you for listening. And if you'd like, please share this conversation or any of the other conversations on my YouTube channel or my podcast channel. It'd be greatly appreciated.